LAX is an airport that needs no introduction. One of the largest airports in the world, Los Angeles International Airport is a mega airport that has been needing a true third-party rendering since the release of the sim. iniBuilds has come to bring us their shot, modeling this airport for a Microsoft Flight Simulator. Let's find out if it's worth picking up. The bottom line is that it's a good airport. The upgrade in the quality of the airport's airside and groundside aspects from Asobo's hand-modeled version is significant. I especially love the effort put into the clutter all around the airport. Really makes the airport feel alive. The night lane of the airport is one of the best I've seen in this sim. There is a clear talent from the developer, which makes it all the more frustrating to find dozens of tiny issues throughout the scenery. Many of these issues are not in areas that a pilot would see in their main field of view. Nonetheless, they hold this back from being a truly great scenery. This scenery costs 20 British pounds. I still think it's worth a pickup. Let's talk about why. Before we kick off this review, let's start by familiarizing ourselves with the airport. I'm right now in drone cam off to the northeast of the airport. We're looking to the west, and you can see the runways 24 right and left in the foreground, and on the far left side you can see the 25 runways. We're gonna move over here, it's closer to the ground side. We can see the famous LAX sign on the lead up, as well as some of the light towers. In the distance, obviously, is the terminals, which we are approaching right now. Up there, you have the famous theme building and the control tower, as well as some of the terminals on our right and left there. You can see terminals 1 through 4, and we are approaching the Tom Bradley terminal. This terminal and its satellite terminal are the only terminals at the airport which have interior modeling. You can see some of the see-through glass windows there on the left. And zooming back out, you can see the west side of the airport and some of the cargo hangars which iniBuilds has modeled. So I'm going to be taking you guys on a tour of the airport through the rest of this review. First, let's get to talking about the terminals. We're going to start with the Tom Bradley International Terminal on the west side of the airport. Architecturally, these buildings are a distinguishing feature of LAX, and iniBuilds recognize that. The 3D modeling of these complex shapes is excellent. With that being said, the texturing on the roofing does look rather flat. The fact that it's a flat pattern just being repeated is very obvious, and it doesn't look great, especially at the edges. On the other hand though, the texturing of the walls of these terminals is fantastic and does appear to have some depth when looking at them from a distance. This terminal and its satellite terminal include a fully modeled interior, which is visible from the outside. This is one of the most stunning points of the scenery. Starting, I think they've done a wonderful job on the see-through windows, an area that many developers trip up on. I love the look of the flooring with the well-done reflections, and the contrast next to the matte carpet flooring. The main atrium of the terminal is full of shops and restaurants, and this looks great too. This is getting a little picky, and something where many users are going to have very different preferences. But I would have loved to see some passengers in this terminal. It looks somewhat eerie looking into this highly detailed world, having no people to see. Moving on to the other terminals at the airport, there is a bit of a downgrade. There is no fully modeled interior to gawk at. The developer has instead chosen to use some visual tricks to give the appearance of see-through windows. I can fully understand this choice. The rest of these terminals are pretty boring, and their windows are much darker in real life, so it is much harder to see inside. With that being said, it still may be disappointing from a user perspective. For the exterior, I think they've done a great job. There's a lot of depth to the texturing, and they've managed to make the white colors actually look good. The 3D modeling got a lot of love here too, and there is a lot of attention to detail across all of these terminals. They even put in effort on the roofs, which not all developers have done. Overall, lovely work on the terminals. And then there is all of the clutter. Look at all of this clutter. I love it. This brings me so much joy to see it scattered around the ground. It makes the airport feel so alive and feels like a lot of activity is happening here. Further, they did a great job varying the cluttered objects and matching the objects to the proper airline at each terminal. Great effort here. They also modeled the airport hangars and even some aircraft at these hangars. I think they've done a solid job on most of these, although I do think the American hangar with its logo looks a bit low quality. On the other hand, the United hangar on the east side of the airport looks absolutely fantastic with a very vibrant blue paint job. The ground textures at this airport are fantastic, but held back by numerous errors. The texturing on the runways is great. Love the wear details. The wear details on the numbers, especially at the end of the runway, look fantastic. Love the work the developer has put in here. With that being said, the runway approach lights on the 2-4 runways are way too tall and improperly colored. In reality, they are much shorter and red. I think they stick out pretty bad. The taxiways look great. I think they've done a really good job capturing those iconic green taxiway edges. Additionally, from everything I've found, the markings appear to be a very accurate representation of reality. The taxiway signs are well done too. They all look like a taxiway sign should, and haven't found many floating taxiway signs. It is somewhat frustrating though to have the taxiway signs not line up with the satellite imagery, which is the case in some locations at the airport. Moving over to the apron and the taxiway stands, things look great here. They've done a great job capturing a lot of detail in the apron markings. I love the variation we get in wear. Each taxi stand I've looked at looks different. It gives a much better feel than just looking at a copy-paste job. Unfortunately, I do have to raise some complaints about how they've done the ground texturing for the civilian roadways. There's a location on the west side of the airport where the taxiway is supposed to be a bridge, and that wasn't even attempted. On the south side of the airport, there is a highway that goes under the runway, and the portal that has been set for the start point of the tunnel causes some weird behavior for the cars. And topographically, the bridge and tunnel isn't modeled. And then on the east side of the airport, there is a bridge for cars over the highway, and that just isn't modeled. These are some glaring issues that do substantially take away from the experience. Now let's take a look at ground side. Any LAX scenery is going to include the iconic In-N-Out burger, a home for plane spotters. This scenery is no different. The building itself looks nice, but I do have to question some material choices they have made. Most notably on the In-N-Out sign, they have chosen to go with a very reflective material, which dulls out the deep red background I was expecting to see on the sign. Moving over to the airport ground side, I think things look much better. Starting off with the LAX letters on the side of the highway, they look great. Moving further west, you have the iconic theme building. This building has so much detail on it. I love the observation deck. Then you have the control tower. I think the efforts here on the material choices and coloring was spot on, and the result is fantastic. The top of the control tower even includes see-through windows so you can pretend you are an air traffic controller. Moving to the ground side, pick up and drop off, great work was put in here. I love the clutter objects that they've put in, and the addition of the AIRSIDE buses. Additionally, the terminals from ground side look great, especially the front of the Tom Bradley International Terminal. I did notice a minor error on the lettering here. There are signs for the B gate drop-off, and those signs are not oriented perpendicular to the road. Really small error, but annoying nonetheless. Between the terminals, we have the parking garages and construction for the upcoming mass transit additions to the airport. In general, I think these look great, but I do have a gripe with the LOD loading on the cars. The simplified shape for the cars is not very nice, and it really sticks out from way too close of a distance. These cars are not really noticeable from anywhere you would be flying a jet from first-person view, so I would say it's only a minor annoyance. This airport is one of the few airports I've found in a flight simulator that I think actually looks better at night than it does during the day. The approach the developers have taken to lighting this scenery, especially thinking about the choices made in light color and intensity, was perfect, and the airport just feels real. Further, unlike some other developers I've seen, I feel that the color temperatures mesh well with the overall lighting style of the simulator. which is important when it comes to maintaining immersion. Starting with the ground side lighting, an iconic part of LAX are the light towers and the theme building, and fun colors have been chosen here that look good. The lighting on the light towers even cycles through different colors. Moving to the interior of the Tom Bradley terminal, the lighting is incredibly well done, although some areas of the main atrium I think are a bit too bright. On the outside at the taxi stands, the light poles provide soft white light, and the gates all have a light up yellow sign that tells you the gate number. Looking inside to the terminal from the taxi stands, the lighting of the Tom Bradley terminal looks great. For the terminals where there isn't an interior, there was an effort to have something be visible through the windows, and while I think what they have is well executed, I don't think it looks great. It feels like I'm looking at the side of a hallway as opposed to looking down into a terminal. Moving on to the taxiways, the lights look great, and I especially love the lighting on the taxiway signs. The contrast with the yellow and black signs is incredibly clear and visible from a distance. Additionally, the runway lights and approach lights look good. I have enjoyed flying here. Really a top-notch scenery from a flight experience perspective. The ground is dense with clutter and well-done ground level signage and buildings, making the airport feel alive. Sitting at a gate, you can see clearly into the terminal, seeing plenty of detail. Similar to other sceneries I have reviewed, it does feel eerie looking into this well-modeled terminal and not seeing any people models. I do think adding that in would add to the immersion of this scenery. There is also the visual docking system, provided by Newell.Aero. It works absolutely perfectly, and as you can see in this clip, it helps guide my parking in to be right on the line. I do wish they had better documentation on this. The website features list just states that the airport has the visual docking guidance system by Newell.Aero, with no explanation of what that is or how to get it. You have to go to Newell's website, which iniBuilds provides no link to, and download it and install it yourself. For your reference, I put the link in the description. Lastly, I do also have to talk about the flight experience on approach with the LOD of the terminal. When at a distance from the airport, the terminals are converted to boxes. This is a very common move by developers to reduce load on your computer. It's all well and good, but the boxes pop up way too close. This is what it looks like on approach to the 2-4s. Pay attention to the terminals. That just doesn't look good. For this airport, we have to ask how it compares to Asobo's hand-modeled airport that Microsoft Flight Simulator provides. On the top is the iniBuilds, and on the bottom is Asobo's. Looking at these comparisons, I think it is very clear that iniBuilds has significantly improved upon Asobo's scenery. Leading up to the release of this scenery, many people were concerned about iniBuilds' ability to pull this scenery off from a performance perspective. LAX is a notoriously demanding airport, and their London Heathrow scenery has gotten mixed reviews on performance. Here at LAX, I think they've done a really solid job. I noticed only a 5 to 10% drop in FPS performance relative to default, and pretty much no stuttering. This good performance continued at night as well, which is very impressive considering how good it looked. So, if your computer can easily handle flying into default LAX, it should handle this airport just fine. A caveat though, I have a pretty beefy computer with a 3070 Ti, an i5-12600K, and 32 gigs of RAM, so your performance experience may be different. This is just what I saw on my computer. That will do it for this review. For FSElite, this has been Spencer. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see everyone next time.